Good evening, everyone, and welcome once again to the Friday Frothy, the Frothy Bar. Hey, Glenn.
How are you, Jeff? How you going, mate? Another big week.
Huge
in, sport.
Huge week. A lot of sport going on, but unfortunately, we're not talking sport again tonight. Well, we are.
Well, we are. We're talking mega sport, but with a mega person that knows all about sport.
We've got another special guest on tonight, and guys, if you missed it last week, Alex Peroni, how good was he?
Brilliant. What a lovely kid.
Yeah.
Very good to talk to someone that's, I don't know, beyond his years, isn't he, really? What a 19-year-old who, the way he came across, mate,
So many people during the week, Glenn, coming up and saying how nice that kid was and how great he was on the show and how good you were.
Blame yourself.
No, it was a good show.
We always try and be good.
If you haven't watched it, get on there and have a look, because it is worth having a look if we say so ourselves. Yeah. He was fantastic. It was great to get an insight into what he's doing. And
we're looking forward to tomorrow night for the fundraising for Alex.
And just on that, hopefully we'll be allowed to do a bit of filming at the fundraiser, so you might be able to see some of that next week on next Friday night show.
Absolutely.
But tonight we're pre-recording because we've got the legend Ken Piesse on. But before we go there, guys, I've got to do a quick little call out. I got in trouble during the week. Lisa and Tanya from Beaconsfield Nursery. Hello, guys. Thanks for joining me. I said I'd mention their name and I didn't, and I got in trouble for it big time.
We'll be able to see them when we're up in line.
Great stall, Beaconsfield. Billy Green from Exeter Hardware and all the staff there.
Hello, Bill.
Hello, Bill. Mate? Thanks for joining in, mate. I hope you're well. It was good to see you the other day. And you've got someone you needed to say hello to.
Yeah. Well, no, he's a guy that I deal with in Melbourne. They're at Glass Outlet. Chrissy Turnbull. How you going, mate?
Hello, Chrissy. How you going, mate?
I think apparently we didn't say anything last time, mate. I thought we did, but you watched the episode, mate. So all the best to the people over there at Glass Outlet. Wonderful people.
Well, there we go, Glenn. We're just about to get Ken on the line, but just before we do start, just wanted to say, guys, we met Ken on a cruise just recently in Pacific Islands. We were on a P&O cruise, and Ken was a guest speaker on the ship. Did 6 shows, and mate, I got to tell you, it was my personal treat. It was the favourite thing that I did on the ship. Was going and listening to his stories. If you don't know Ken Piesse, he's written 75 books all around AFL and cricket. He's worked in media. He's on the radio. He's been a commentator. He's done everything. He knows everything. He knows everyone.
And knows everyone. So anyone that was any good or not any good, Ken knows them. So and they seem to know Ken. So
they certainly do. You're in for a treat.
Yeah, exactly right, mate. And
all right, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ken Piesse. How are you, Ken?
Yes, going well, lads. Nice to be speaking with you again.
Yeah, good to hear your voice, mate. We enjoyed the cruise. And,
no, going fine.
Beautiful.
And for all the listeners, it was hilarious on board ship because my missus and I walked out onto the non-smoking side of the ship where we all met Jeff and so on, and here the 2 boys on these big deck chairs, and they're reading favourite footy yarns. And Susan said, "Did you see that? Did you see that?" I said, "No, have another look." And there they were. So, and we took the photo and we put it up on Facebook, discerning readers of one of the great sporting books. So that was how we all met. So it's been a heap of fun to not only you fellas, but gee whiz, they were such a captive audience for all the sports stories, both cricket and footy, and we're going to be doing it all again pretty soon, which is a heap of fun. But always nice to speak sport with you, lads.
That's fantastic. We appreciate it so much. In the intro, Ken, I actually did mention that that was the highlight of the cruise for both Glenn and myself, were the 6 shows that you did. Certainly the highlight. Absolutely loved it.
Being sporting backgrounds and that, mate, it was we couldn't get enough of it. But there's not too many people with your knowledge, obviously, and what you've done. So you cover a long period of time, and I'm not getting any younger either, mate. So it was good.
Now, Ken,
well,
you're right.
There's no doubt that I love telling stories, and my new book I'm working on at the moment, it's called One Test Wonders, and there's 70 of them. 70 Australians have only made one appearance for Australia, and I've been speaking to all the ones that are still on the right side of the ledger, including 82-year-old Keith Slater from Western Australia, who was literally the first Western Australian to play a home test. Now this goes back even before you boys were born, and I reckon I was only a young toddler myself. This is 58, 59. Yep. And he was a salesman at the local sports store. He was a footballer and a cricketer, and he was around Perth town. It was only a big country town in those days, and there was this huge commotion. St George's Terrace was chaotic, and where his sports store was around the corner in Murray Street, you just couldn't move. There was this outside broadcast TV van there, and he said, "Yeah, I wonder what all the commotion was for." He finally makes it through the throng, and "Hey, Spud," that was his nickname, of course, Spud Slater. "Hey, Spud, you're in." "What do you mean I'm in?" You're in the test team." "Am I?" And he said you could have knocked him over with a feather. He just couldn't believe it. He'd played against Peter May's team, the Englishman who toured 58, 59, and he'd got forfeit in the second innings, but he bowled just off spin in the first innings and pretty innocuously. But in the second innings, the captain, Ken Mulman, who was a former Victorian, who went across and such a great name in the West, of course, Mulman sports stores themselves, 3 generations have run it, and Ken said to Slater at the tea break of the game, "Well, we need a big strong bastard to be able to run into the wind. The Fremantle doctor is in. I want to bowl the quicks. Ron Gaunt and Des Hoare, a one-test wonder as well, downwind." And so Slater came into the wind, and he said he was trying to bowl good outswingers, but they kept on reversing back into the right-handers. He said, "I've got no idea how it happened, but suddenly he had 4 for 18 by stumps, including Peter May first ball, and on the hat-trick ball, Colin Cowdrey has walked in, and literally he's been hit by this late-veering reverse swing in-dipper right in front of the wickets, and Slater just went up. He just thought it was out. Even Cowdrey, who was a walker, nodded to him, well bowled, but the umpire didn't give 2 LBWs in a row, said not out. And to this day, Slater was saying the umpire, Jack Gillett, just sits around the corner, and he's still apologising to me. So everyone in sport, you boys, Glenn and Jeff, myself, we've all got a favourite story, or we've got a story to tell, and I just sit back and listen to the boys telling me stories. It's just great. So it's been a real fortunate life for me. Like, I'm in the early 60s now, but I've been covering footy and cricket, AFL and cricket now, I reckon since the early 70s, so it's almost 50 years in the game, so it's been a heap of fun being able to and I'm just a sports nut like you boys, so it's nice to be paid for the privilege.
You went straight from school into journalism, didn't you? Or was it straight to the paper? Is that correct?
Yeah. So I was straight out of school, and Mum likes telling the story. I joined The Age, and Graham Perkin, who was one of the great Australian journalists, certainly in the 70s, The Age was a halcyon period for them. They had really great journalists there, and I was just a young green kid, new boy on the block. And my dad said to me, "Well, any advice when I meet Graham Perkin?" I got through to the 3rd interview, and he said, "Just look him in the eye, give him a Ted Whitten handshake, you know what I mean there, son, and smile at him." And I got the job, and Mum reckons that only there was 400 people going for it, and I was one of 7 cadet reporters who actually was hired. So that was just a fantastic experience. But at The Age, they put you through the ringer in that you did all sorts of other stuff, from police reporting and finance, through to 1 year there in the 75, I worked on sport, and that was always what I wanted to be. But doing and learning some of the other tricks of the trade, that really helped me take off as a sports writer, both cricket and footy. And from The Age, I went to the Sporting Globe, but they made me the chief cricket and footy writer there. And Greg Hobbs, the editor, said, "Well, why don't you go down and see, there's an old fella called Laurie Nash. He'll know who you are because you love cricket and footy so much." Because Laurie played Test cricket for Australia, but he was also a star centre-half forward for South Melbourne, going back a long time in the 30s, and if you like, he was the Wayne Carey of the era. Like, he could kick incredible goals, and he used to strut around a little bit like the duck. And so I asked this fella one question, Laurie Nash, one question, and 2 hours later he was still talking. So it was getting late in the afternoon. I said, I've got to get back to the office. Thanks so much, Laurie, after the one question. And Greg Hobbs, my editor, said all the best to you, and he did say, ask Laurie who was the best player that he's ever seen. And Laurie said to me, "Young man, I look at him every morning in the mirror when I shave." it was just funny. So it really went from there. It was a lovely nostalgia. I love talking to the current young players, but also like talking to the old players, like Spud Slater in his 80s in Perth and having a balance problem, but he's still got an absolute erudite memory, and he's just so good with his facts and figures. And I was checking them today. I've got the facts figures in front of me, and he was just spot on. So yeah, it has been a fortunate life for me, and now working with P&O as well on cruise ships. We try and do 2 or 3 a year. It's a nice way to transition to retirement.
Oh, my word.
He wouldn't have been related to Michael Slater, of course. Ken, would he?
No, Mick comes from the New South Wales country, and a Midland Guildford boy, our local Perth boy, and a hero in himself. And this is what makes it so fascinating, because being a long way away from Perth over here in Melbourne, I knew that Slater was a footballer, but he actually played in 3 premierships in a row with Swan Districts, and in the 3rd premiership, 1963, he literally won the game rucking against Polly Farmer, maybe the greatest, or might even have been 61. But in one of those grand finals, he rucked against Polly Farmer, maybe the greatest ruckman who's ever been, certainly amongst the top 5 footballers that all the old people have ever seen. And he was best on the field, won the Simpson Medal for being the best player off field. So while he said that he played footy just to keep fit for cricket, he loved cricket so much, Spud. His CV as a footballer, more than 200 games, 21 West Australian appearances. And it's often the case, isn't it, with the star cricketers or footballers, they're good at the other sport.
My word.
But in those days, you didn't have to specialise. And so I'm just sitting back, listening, and Spud said, "You still there, Ken?" I said, "Spud, I'm loving it, mate. I'm loving it. Keep talking."
That's similar to the story you were talking about on the ship with was it Robert Harvey and the running?
Oh, his regime.
Yeah.
No one, as you said, you I think you mentioned to us that you hadn't met anyone that had the training capacity and the will to train, to put everything into it to get the best out of himself match day.
So inspirational, really, and I try and tell some of the kids that I mentor and coach now, like, that was his 21st season, the 2008 draft day it was. This was November. So I'm just walking the puppies along the beach down here at Mount Eliza, and there's this big guy just with a pair of footy shorts and brand new runners. You could tell they were almost gleaming in the sun. And it was Robert, it was Bobby coming the other way, but I didn't interrupt. We know each other pretty well. We used to play at the same cricket club. And I said, "G'day, Bobby." He said, "G'day, Master." And he just kept on going, and I kept on going with the puppies. But I thought to myself, wow, it's November. The first game is still 4.5, 5 months away, and here he is, one of the all-time champions of the game. He's not sitting back drinking cold beer in November, in a run-up to summer. He's working his body as hard as he possibly could. And down at our local gym at Mount Eliza, literally there's 2 running machines there that he busted. He got them up to 18 and 19. He just ran on them for as hard as he could. Might have been 10, 12 minutes, flat out sprinting. He was going at 85, 95% of what he could do. And he literally, these 2 machines busted. So I think Harvey was amazing, and Nathan Buckley, like his sheer dedication and his intelligence. So I always knew he was going to be a great coach. And years ago, might have been 99, 2000, we did a book with Buckley, Rocker, and Sav Rocker and Paul Williams. And Collingwood didn't do any good this year, but every Monday we'd meet at Craig Kelly's offices in Richmond. He was managing all 3 and would come up with ideas. So I was the journalist supposed to have all the ideas. But I tell you, within 4 or 5 weeks, Buckley would just come in and have it all covered. I was almost superfluous, I'd help the other 2, but Buckley was just so spot on in his sheer meticulous preparation. You just knew he was going to be fantastic. But it takes, why we love sport so much, cricket and football, is that it takes all shapes and sizes. Like a Dale Waitman, 5'5" at Richmond, was kept on being turned away by the under-19s coach. "You're too small. Just go back to the bush, son." But he kept on going, and he captained Victoria. Like we talked about Spud Slater, 20 times Waitman was involved as a Victorian Big V player, when interstate football was so big. And I was saying to the cricket boys just the other day about Jason Dunstall, his first time that and he went down to Hawthorn. They did a pre-season run, maybe a 400-yard sprint, and I'm not kidding, Dunstall came last by about 200 yards. He was so slow, and Normie Goss, the chairman of selectors, said to Ellen Jeans, Yabby, who's that fat bloke at the back? And she said, that's our star full forward from Kedron. We hope he's going to kick a lot of goals for us.
Yeah, actually,
and of course, 10 years down the track, Jason Dunstall has kicked 900 goals, an average of 90 or 95 goals a year. He's amongst the all-time goal-kicking greats, 1,000-plus goals, Lockett and Gary Ablett and all these guys. Better than even Peter Hudson, my old hero, and he did it on hard work too. Like, I'd go down on one of the books that I've done, and as you know, I've written or edited 75 books, and 20 of them are on footy, and 8 or 9 of those have been ghosted with all the stars. Lockett, Dunstall, Brereton, Pipper, Paul Salmon, Libber, and in Dunstall's book, I'd go down on Wednesday night to Hawthorn. He'd be doing extra training. This is when players would only train Tuesday and Thursday, and he'd do an extra routine with George Stone, the Hawthorn runner, and he was doing chin-ups and press-ups, and Stone was kicking the ball at him from around 7 or 8 yards, and he was taking the ball out in his hands. And so this is, around about early 90s, and this was before, chest marks went out of vogue, and everybody in those days would mark on the chest. Dunstall was taking it out in his hands, and while he was slow, he couldn't run out of sight on a dark night, he was very quick off the mark, and he was able to do some of the sprint training to keep him going and really make him fast off the mark. But then his hands, every time he took, rarely was there ever a two grabber. He would just go clunk. And Dermot Brereton's a mate of mine, another local, and Dermot said to me, you know what, Piesse? They're not kicking the ball to me anymore. They're just bypassing me and going straight down the guts of the fat bloke. Dunstall. And that's the way the Dunstall-Brereton combination worked. So again, they work so hard. The champions of the game, but they're not champions by accident.
Yeah. No, I can remember Dunstall. Actually, funny enough, Ken, that he came down. He was actually representing Queensland.
Cooperoo.
He was from Cooperoo, but he came down and they were playing against Tasmania, and that was just before he went to Hawthorn. He kicked 6, I think, that day at North Hobart, and he was on a guy that I know fairly well. And as you said, it wasn't the pace or anything like that. He had the long hair then, and it was over the first 10 and 15 that he was leading out at different angles. Different angles, and even then you could tell that he had something. He had the big build in the shoulders and everything else, but he obviously went on to to be the sort of player he is.
The champion, for sure.
Oh, Yabby James just loved him because he was just so consistent, and they had a famous trip away there in America once, and the old trip away rules, whoever sits in the front seat with the taxi driver has to pay. But this day, none of the boys, for some reason, they didn't have the money, or they didn't want to partake with their money and hand it over to the American who was driving, and literally I think it was Ray Jenke, Pritchard in the back and Dunstall in the front, and they stopped the car just around the corner from the hotel, and literally all three of ran out of the car and went to run off when the guy just pulled the gun on them and said, "You guys stop right there," and literally word quickly got to Yabby Jeans. This is 3 o'clock in the morning, Saturday morning, and word got to Yabby. He's come down in his pajamas around the corner, and there they three were, all up against a gutter with this American taxi driver holding the gun against him. And Jeans said to him, "I know that there's been a lot of trouble here. I'm going to give you the money, but whatever you do, see that big fat fella just there, don't touch him. He's our full forward. The other two, doesn't matter at all, but don't touch Dunstall."
Great story.
Oh, dear me. Mate.
So everybody wants to come on the P&O tour, and they know that I'm there. I'm going to give you a story after story, and you're going to walk out of there with a smile on your dial, which is about cricket and footy, which is what it's all about, isn't it? Life's pretty short, and I just reckon that if you can entertain people and remind them of some wonderful nostalgia, well, I reckon that's a good thing.
Well, it's a great passion, isn't it? It's a passion. Sport's a passion.
You certainly entertained us, mate. That was for sure. And when you actually said yes to the email that you'd come onto the show,
we were. Yeah,
we're pretty chuffed actually talk to you again.
Absolutely.
So now just on questions and things, I put it out to a few people and we've got some questions that come in, and I hope I'm not going to throw you in the deep end here, because one of the winning questions that we got, from which we gave away a shirt and a stubby cooler from the Friday Frothy, was about Syd Barnes. And I don't know if you know much about Syd Barnes, but the question is, was he the best bowler ever? And I've got the stats here. His best is 9 for 103. He's got an average
189 test wickets.
Yeah, 16.43 average. Do you know much about him?
So this is the English Syd Barnes. He was an SYD Barnes, and he played professional cricket right through until into his 60s. He was still getting match fees from local clubs in England, in the north, where professional cricket is really big, into his 60s, and he was a star. And one day at the MCG, he got literally 5 wickets for, it might have been 20, all before lunch, and the names were the who's who. So if you think of an Australian batting lineup of, say, Clark, Ponting, Hayden, Langer, and one other, well, going back 100 years, Barnes got the quality of those guys out, plus a couple more, and he got 6 for, and he was just a star. He could swing the ball around corners, this Syd Barnes. And so biographies are still coming out on him. I've got 4 or 5 different biographies on Barnes. The people of today are still transfixed by his performances, but also by his attitude. Like, he would have come to Australia again immediately after the war, but he said to the MCC that I'd like my wife to come too, and they said, no, wife's not allowed on tour. And so Barnes said, well, you can stick it. I'm not going to go. And he didn't. And he didn't. So he had that sort of, and nothing against Dennis Lilly, he had that maverick attitude, a fast bowler's maverick attitude, like a Dennis Lilly, and he's very much his own man. He didn't bow to anybody, and so he would have played many more test matches had he been more of an ultimate team player, like a Pat Cummins type or a Peter Hanscom type, but even in the test matches he played, I think he averaged, and you got the stats there, 5 or 6 wickets a game, and he was just a superstar. So Australia had a Syd Barnes. He was an opening batsman, and he was a part of Bradman's Invincibles. But England's Syd Barnes, maybe he was the greater of the two, and certainly amongst the greatest bowlers in history. Jimmy Anderson, of course, has gone past all these guys just on the sheer weight of wickets, gone past both of them, and Willis and all these sorts of people. But Jimmy Anderson, as we'll see come August, he still is a star even in his mid-30s. So the Australians, they're going to have it all their own way over in England against a player of his ilk. And Barnes could swing the ball like an Anderson, but he also they asked him once, you could bowl just about everything, Mr. Barnes. Did you have a googly? And he looked at the interview and he said, son, I didn't need it. I didn't need a googly.
That's probably one of the questions, mate. I think probably the hardest thing, especially with sports people over different decades and whatnot, like the younger ones, they look at the stars of today, and we look at the older players, with the as you said, the Garfield Sabres and all these types, and then we try and work out who's the best, which is almost, would you think, with all your experience, something we never spoke about on the boat really, but it's almost nearly impossible, isn't it, to almost pick a greater side of all time, because of the fact that helmets were worn when Tony Greig, introduced it come, what do you call it, World Series cricket, and you sort of look at the young fellas today, and in the last game I saw a lot of them are getting hit, just above the shoulders, and these guys used to go out without, as you said, pint-sized bats, as you pointed out to us before, no helmets, not much padding, and they were still bowling around the 90 click mark and this sort of thing. So it's a tough one, and the pitches now are basically rolled out, whereas I suppose back in the day it was up and down. So what do you think about that?
The pitches back then, Jeff and Glenn, when they were uncovered, and they would cover, one year they brought in, about the 20s, they brought in the rule where they would cover the run-ups only, but the pitch itself, the 22 yards, 23 yards there, that was always left uncovered. So, you know, batting was very, very tough. And so Australia had Victor Trumper, who many still think is on the same plane as Bradman. I just don't think it's possible, really, despite the smaller bats and the uncovered wickets. Like, he was a genius, and scoring wasn't as heavy in those days. But, you know, there was only one Bradman. But it is hard. I think any champion, footy or cricket, in any era would be like, if we took Trumpet to today, he'd be the darling of everybody. If we took Bradman, you know, he'd be the biggest personality in Australia, maybe the most important Australian of all. And people still talk, you know, with such admiration of Bradman. We've talked about it, and his sheer contribution to the game has just been marvellous. But you know, he didn't rub everyone up the right way. But that's life. You know, you can't appeal to everybody. But yeah, I reckon those champions of yesteryear, like a Sydney Barnes from England, you know, he would have been an absolute superstar, Herculean performer these days. But it's still fun to be able to pick those all-star teams, and I think it's lovely with those Cricket Australia awards, as they have them now, where they recognise someone now, and Dean Jones was recognised just a couple of weeks ago, but they also recognised Billy Murdoch, who was a bit of a maverick himself, and he led the first players' strike, and the whole Test team went on strike, and they picked entirely a new Australian 11. 5 of those only played one test. So I'm writing about them right now in this new book for next year. It'll be One Test Wonders from cricketbooks.com.au. But yeah, it's just it's one of cricket's. It's such a game of personalities, and it's a way of life. Like people who love cricket, but they expect nothing else of it, you know. They'll do their Monday to Friday job, but, you know, they'll go home, they'll watch, doesn't matter what it is, from the 2020 to the One Day International, the World Cup coming up, it's going to be fascinating. And then for us, you know, we're going to have a tour group over in England, Lords and Leeds for Test 2 and 3, so, we just can't wait. And I know that you boys are saving up your coin to try and get on one of these tours too, so it's life worth living when you can spend a few shekels and go and see some of the test grounds you've never been to before. Yeah,
my word. Now listen, that question from Syd Barnes, that was from Craig Myers in Victoria. I've got another one here from David. He's from Perth. It's about George Bailey. And the question is, should age be a factor in picking an Australian cricket team? With the recent team struggling to get wins and runs on the board, George Bailey, before his injury, was in such hot form with the bat and on the field. Why don't we give players a go who are in form, no matter what their age is?
Well, I think they're trying to do that. Greg Chappell's still a selector. You know, he's always big on picking horses for courses and pick them when they're hot, especially fast bowlers. He's really a big one for, if there's an unknown kid who's taken 2 lots of 7-fers, he wants him in the next grade, whether or not it be playing first 11 club cricket, playing Sheffield Shield, into the 2020 stuff, or for Australia too. I think it can be difficult. Bailey had been a test player and reasonably undistinguished, other than hitting for Anderson for 26, I reckon, in 1 over, which would have to be right up there amongst the most runs ever off a 6-ball over in a test match. But other than that, he didn't do too much. And while he was a terrific one-day captain for Australia and a pretty good batsman too, it could be that his time had passed. I reckon the best ages for a batsman, probably 28 to 33, 34 at the most. I reckon after that you just lose a little bit of your edge. And Bailey's now mid-30s, and maybe it was time to go with a younger guy, a Darcy Short, give Maxwell a go. Like in the upcoming World Cup, people are talking about Smith and Warner coming straight back.
That's not a question.
Maybe they deserve to. Maybe on paper they should be there, but it's meaning one of those young guns is going to miss out, whether it be a Maxwell or a Short. And you know, these guys have been putting in the hard yards, especially in. And I'm not biased towards the Victorian because I happen to live here, but you know, Maxwell is such a clean hitting striker of the ball, a beautiful fieldsman. he bowled pretty well the other night too, bowling ahead of Nathan Lyon in the one day at Nagpur. So, I hear what our Western Australian friend is saying, that maybe Bailey should have got more of a go, but I reckon that when deep down he'll sit back, and I haven't got his stats in front of me, but I reckon he would have played for Australia maybe 100 times and captained 20 or 25 times. I reckon he'll look back on that and be pretty satisfied.
I think you're right. I think from where he's come from and what he's done, I think he should be proud. But
he's been an amazing form.
He's certainly been good. And what these guys do too, if they're not playing for Australia, I mean, they're doing well for their own state sides, which is exactly what that guy's done. So thanks for that question.
Now, Peter from Victoria wants to know about the ball tampering scandal. Do you think the sentence was too long, and will Warner and Smith walk straight back into the Australian team?
And I think Smith, and I said this on board the P&O, our Pacific Jewel cruiser we went on, I reckon Smith will be Australia's next Test captain. It's going to be a 12-month hiatus. I think Paine can probably hang on for the Ashes and maybe one more Australian season, and I hope he does. And if he does, I think, and a few people might disagree and say that Smith has forever tarnished his record. It was just a gross error of misjudgment, and he really shouldn't have said yes, but he was out on his feet, he was exhausted. Warner was the ringleader there, and Warner won't be able to captain even a team of Tiddlywinks champions. And probably rightly so. I thought that they had to be made an example of, and I know others will say, well, the South African, Duplessis, was done for shining the ball against his belt buckle, trying to make an abnormal crease in the ball so that they could reverse swing the ball. Okay, well that's them. Maybe that was a soft thing. But in Australia, I think that we pride ourselves on our sportsmanship. We play very hard. Sometimes we do cross the line, but we don't mind being beaten. But let's get beaten with honour. Let's accept the victories with good grace, and let's accept the losses with good grace. Those boys disgrace the brand, and they deserve to get what they got. That's the bottom line.
Just another, this is going, just ducking away quickly from cricket, just for 1 second. A guy, Larry Hannigan, how are you, Larry?
Larry?
Up in Burnie, he went on our first cruise. Ken, so his question, and we're jumping now to who in your eyes, is the best VFL stroke AFL player ever? So in your eyes, who do you think?
That's tough.
That's a tough one. It's exactly what we just spoke about in the cricket, but
years ago I did a complete guide to Australian football, which was like an encyclopedia, A to Z, with all the best players who played 200 games or won a Brownlow medal or literally played in 4 premierships. Hayden Bunton in the 30s from Fitzroy was pretty remarkable because he won 3 Brownlows. He went to Perth after that and won 3 Sandovers. So he must have been very, very special, Hayden Bunton. As a young kid, Hawthorn mad. I loved Lee Matthews. He'd always get the ball onto his boot near goal and have his kick at goal, and kick more than 900 goals as a first rover, come goal snake. He was remarkable. But the king, Wayne Carey, he literally, like a Shane Warne, who won more matches of Test cricket for Australia, even than Don Bradman, Wayne Carey won more matches for North Melbourne. And Dennis Pagan, like his coach, long-time coach, he just loved Wayne. At a three-quarter time, he would just look at him, and Wayne would just know that somehow he had to find a way of being able to lift. And the only footballer that could go with him was Glenn Jakovic. And Dennis was always at him, use your pace, son, use your pace, your athleticism. But Wayne he'd been in the gym too, like Glenn Jakovic, and he'd want to out-strength him, beat him that way. And I reckon Jacko finished ahead of him more often in their classic one-on-ones. It was a little bit like, for the older people, Van der Haar going up against Peter Knights. And one day, I think at Windy Hill, and they both took 10 speckies, and it was just one of the classic high-marking confrontations of all time. Carey and Jakovic, some of their great games, they really were something. So I'd say that Carey is the greatest footballer that I've ever seen. So what am I, early 60s, so that's 50 years of watching footy. But, I love Lee Matthews, and going back, people like Hayden Bunton must have been very, very special indeed.
You've put a smile on my face anyway as a North Melbourne supporter, mate, so well done.
We used to get him down here, Ken. I remember of a night. I can remember again him coming over. He played at North Adelaide. We used to get a look at him some of the South Australian games before he actually went to North Melbourne, and you could tell right then and there he was going to be absolute star then, because he was dominating the competition over there then.
Yeah.
So we used to get for some reason South Australian football fairly late at night, and him, Craig Bradley, obviously went on to Carlton and these types, even Modra, these before Adelaide, and that actually joined the AFL. So they were sensational.
They're such great stories, aren't they? And Greg Miller's a mate of mine, was at North Melbourne, and he went across to a high school game that Carrey happened to be in, and Miller was going to see somebody else. This other kid had big raps, but Carrey was at centre half back. He kept on kicking the ball to the full forward goal square, and Miller thought, Jesus, what have we got here? And they went in to ask his headmaster, whether or not he could come across for a couple of days and see if he liked Melbourne. And of course, he came at 16, and he ran into Dennis Pagan, who was coaching the under-19s at that stage in North. And Dennis said, well, son, welcome down to Arden Street, North Melbourne. I'll see you down at training tonight. And Wayne Carey said to him, thanks so much, Dennis, but I'm training with the firsts. He was 16 years old. I'm here to play in the firsts. So, you have to have an arrogance about you.
Yep.
You have to have that confidence that Carey had a little bit of each, and it certainly helped him as a footballer, because he could be unstoppable. And could easily have won a Brownlow, but as captain, he was forever. Some of the abuse against the umpires, I couldn't repeat some of the things he'd say in this particular forum, but he was scathing towards them, and it is very sad. And we know about the off-field dramas with he and Anthony Stevens and Glenn Archer, and Archer was made shinboner of the century, but we all know the best footballer to ever represent North Melbourne. It's not Glenn Archer, it's Wayne Carey, and he lost that on pure politics. But anyway, that's an argument for another day. Both fantastic players, and Archer, just to put in a sixpence worth for him, he was receiving, when he first played at North Melbourne, $5,000 a year. I thought that was pretty good. He played a couple of blinders against Sydney, and they offered him the following year to go and play with them on $140,000.
Wow.
So I'm not sure what the markup is between 5,000 and 140, but plenty. And he said, no, I'm going to play with my mates at North.
Wow.
So that's why people love Arch. He's just a fabulous player, and just one of the nicest boys you'd meet anywhere, anytime.
Wow, that's incredible. And listen, we won't take up too much more of your time, Ken. We are absolutely thrilled to have you once again. But mate, do you want to have a quick talk about the latest book, Cec Pepper? Because he's quite an interesting character. We've done a bit of talking. I don't know if you've seen any of the shows, but we've actually talked about Cec Pepper and your book on the last couple of shows, and he's quite an interesting character.
Yeah, he was the wild colonial boy, Cec, and I've written 2 books for the Christmas market, one on Australian cricket scandals and Pep, the Cec Pepper story. They've both been reprinted, so people can get them from me from a website, that cricketbooks.com.au. But Pepper was a big hitter, a flipper bowler, and he had a blue with Don Bradman, and it stopped him from playing Test cricket, and he went and played professionally in England, where he met a pretty girl and had a kid out of wedlock. He ended up having 3 boys, all 2 of them out of wedlock, only one legitimately, if you like. He loved the women, and they loved him. He was very charismatic. He and Keith Miller were the greatest of mates, my old mate Nugget Miller. And so Cec, if you like, a lot of the people out there wouldn't have heard of him. He found an umpire, and a very, very good one, but he had a real mouth on him. He upset Bradman one day, basically called him a cheat, and from that day, once you upset the Don, your file was marked, never play again. So he became renowned as a town cricketer rather than a Test cricketer. So he played for all the major Lancashire League clubs for years and years, also into his 40s, at a very high level. And he used to sponsor a lot of the cricketers who'd come across, like a Basil D'Oliveira, a Frank Worrell, a young Gary Sobers. So he had so many mates, but off the field with his family, it was a checkered history, and it was a real warts and all biography. I was just amazed by the behaviour of this bloke, because I was finding out stuff that has just never been written about. So as a writer, if you can, rather than rehashing what's been, if you can find out primary information, and I was able to do that, and his brother, who's 97 years old, Cec Pepper, a star golfer himself, a great Australian sportsman, he said, wow, this is the best book I've ever read, he said. I said, sorry, I had to put in all the bad stuff as well as the good stuff. He said, well, that was Sed's for you. He was out there. He was a maverick. He's everything that you said he was. And so it has been doing really well for me. Just a limited edition. We've only printed less than 1,000 copies of it, so people won't get it in their Dimmicks or Collins or their local bookshop. But if you would like a rip-roaring read about the Wild Colonial Boy, Cec Pepper is the one. As I say, cricketbooks.com.au. But again, lads, I just love talking sport with you, and can we please do this again in a couple of months' time? I just really love that leading up to the AFL.
Serious?
There's just one quick question before Jeff signs off with this, mate. It was a question I was going to ask you on the boat, but I think me and you got something in common, mate. We both go for the great club, Hawthorn.
Here we go.
There was one guy that was the reason that I played football, and I'll give up my age here now. I'm nearly 56, Ken. So, but when I started watching, it was black and white TV. Peter Crimmins was a similar little. I was a little snowy-head little fella, and TV was black and white. Peter Crimmins was again, when you said smaller stature as a player, but certainly a magnificent, I thought, player, and that's why I barracked for that club. And I noted that his wife has just given up not given up, but she's given the Hawthorn Football Club such a great service as #1 ticket seller. The number one holder, ticket holder for the club.
Yeah, Gwen Crimmins.
Yes, Gwen. And so was there anything that, did you ever meet the guy or interview the guy before he's
Crimo was an amazing player. They called him Captain Courageous. And,
he was.
And for those that remember the old football magazine, it was one of the first, it was a big size, not quite A3 size, but called Football Life. And Crimo was on the cover of one of those Football Lifes. This was, late 60s, so I'm going back a fair way, but I've got them all. Like, I collect everything, and I've got all these old magazines. Crimo signed it for me once, and he was working with Puma, and we used to have a Puma Cricketer of the Year, and I was at the Age newspaper, and Keith Stackpole won it, and I still remember being in the photo with Stackpole and also Crimo handing it over, but even then you could tell it wasn't quite right. And years later, I was speaking with John Kennedy, and there was a grand final that they didn't select Peter for. This was 1975, and he died just days after the 76 grand final. He was too sick, but he wanted to play in the 75 final series, and play in the grand final, but Kennedy voted him no. He didn't want him to get hurt. But he said, and Hawthorn lost this 75 grand final to North Melbourne, and he said, given the time again, and given how passionate he was and how much he was loved by the players, it was a downer when they knew that Crimo wasn't going to play for us. And he said, I would have made the opposite decision. Talking with old John, who's still around now, one of the ultimate legends of them all, and just such fascinating company to be a mate of those sorts of people. Kennedy, Jeans, and Sheedy, these sorts of people. Yeah, you're just so lucky. But yeah, Crimo was an inspirational rover from Assumption College, played alongside Peter Hudson, and one day, and I know that you're trying to get in touch with Huddo too at Booper, he'd be a great one, and just asking about the Crimo, because he'd be talking 10 minutes, 15 minutes just on one man. He was that sort of boy, Peter Crimmins, a real living legend, and who unfortunately was taken early.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Ken, thank you so much, mate. It's just been
bottom of our hearts. We appreciate it. We do.
Now, all I can say is we do have a list of books on our counter at the moment on the bar, and Glenn and I, we can certainly say, guys,
fantastic read.
Go and grab them. They are fantastic. As you said, we'll put a link below for www.cricketbooks.com.au. Is that correct?
Yep, that's the one thing, Jeff.
So you can purchase books from there. And all I can say, if guys, anyone out there who's going on the cruise that Ken's going to be on, go and see his shows, because
we went and saw all of them. I'll go again. If you did 50 shows, mate, I'll be at all 50.
Yep, 100%. 100%. And I tell you what, if you're happy to do it again in another couple of months, mate, we'll definitely get some viewer questions, and we'll just have a question and answer night if you wanted to. But that's up to you. We'll talk about that later on.
Sounds good. Thanks again, boys. I've really loved it, and I hope the listeners have enjoyed it too. So,
thank you so much.
Au revoir for now,
Yeah.
and look forward to being in touch with you again in a couple of months.
Thank you so much.
Thanks
Ken.
again,
Appreciate
Ken.
it.
All
Thank
the best,
you.
mate. You look after yourself. Okay.
Cheers, lads.
See you, mate. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye. Well, there you
Mate.
go, mate. Ken Piesse.
I could just, I know the time slot only goes for a certain amount of time. I could have asked him, I could have,
Yeah, I know.
you just could sit there for hours and hours and just listen to this guy talk. And I do apologise because I had to get that Peter Crimmins bit in because he is the reason I was tied up with sport.
I know.
With football.
I know.
I never got
was
that
Wayne,
out, but,
Wayne Carrey though. Happy with that.
Well,
Happy with that.
but yeah, as we said, I mean, he is.
As I said, ladies and gents, the books that we've got here, we're not putting them up there to try and get Ken sales. We're putting them up there because they're a fantastic read.
Yeah,
and they're written so well. Even a mug like me can understand them.
Even if you're not sports, even if you don't think you like sports, this is a good read. It's just about life. It's not just about cricketers and that. It's about their life. These are storybooks. In other words, they're about their families and about how they get to where they get to. So, well done, mate.
So there you go, Glenn. Now,
pretty big couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's been a big couple of weeks. Hopefully, as we said in the beginning of the show, we'll do a bit of filming at Alex Peroni's fundraising night.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the three-course meal
tomorrow night. So we'll show that the following week. And if we can get Ken back on, and ladies and gentlemen, if we do get your questions in, because this guy knows everything. He's amazing, as you would have heard. So that's all we've got time for tonight. I hope you've thoroughly enjoyed it, because I certainly
have. Yeah.
Certainly have.
So for any sport nuts out there, I'll be one of them.
And just while we're there, if you like what we're doing, guys, please subscribe. We need you to ring the bell, subscribe to YouTube, and give us a thumbs up, because we're enjoying what we're doing. And I've got a list of names, as you heard from Ken, we're chasing
Peter Hudson. And funny enough, we're not pulling names, mate, but I met him. He's been when Dad was live. He's been into our house. We've watched him. I watched him here play here. And he's a little bit older, but I tell you what, you could not describe how good that guy was.
No. So fingers crossed. We've got some cricketers coming on. We've got hopefully some V8 supercar drivers coming on, and then we've got some
other sports.
We've got some local talent that I'm looking at
boys,
as well. Yeah.
Because that's what it's about. It's about grassroots as well, not just the big names.
It is people who are at the top of the tree of their sport but don't get the acknowledgement that they deserve.
Exactly.
That's what we are.
That's what we are, mate.
Anyway, guys, I hope you have a great week. Have a great weekend. Thanks for joining us. And go to the froth. We'll see you next week.
See ya.
Bye-bye.